Hello and welcome to a new Italian P&C video. This is the 4th episode of the Beyond the Ice Walls second ring series. So first of all, what is this? What are you looking at? Well, if you've not been here for the rest of our journey and looked at the previous episodes of this series, well, it's easily explained. This is the continuation of the original Beyond the Ice Walls series, where we looked at the Beyond the Ice Walls map and looked at the first circle after the ice walls that surround the entirety of our known world, so all of the 7 or 6 continents depending on the person that are on our Earth. And following that, we talked about all these places right here, where we had a map that showed the countries in each of these continents as shown in this map. But now we have started a series on something new, and that is the second ring. The second ring is the area outside of the Montane ring, which is the second ice walls that surrounds the entirety of the first ring. And the second ring is also full of major, massive continents with more and more complicated histories and less information on them, so there's a lot of researching to do, and of course that's what I bring you. And this of course is the map made by Oha, as all you know already probably, and yeah, basically that's kind of it. In the last 3 episodes we have explored many of the continents on this side of the map, and that is what we will continue to do in this episode as well. So today we will be looking at 3 or 4 continents in this part of the map, continuing our research. Then probably in the next continent we will be moving more north, next to the titanic forests and the sky caverns. That said, let's start already by the first continent we can talk about already today. That is the continent of Eiwass. Eiwass, the levitating continent. So, first of all, let's see its geography. The first thing you notice is this outline. The Eiwass or Eiwass continent has some weird outline that basically surrounds the entirety of the continent. This kind of floating mist, like I don't know how you could call it, like some sort of, yeah, this little, you can see it when I zoom in, this thing that divides the oceans from the land. Well, that is not like just some artistic choice. It's actually part of the continent's geography. So that said, we have 2 or 3 peninsulas, one on the east and 2 on the west. It is divided in major mountain chains, and it is actually divided by the equator of the second ring. These red lines that go through these land masses are of course the equators. We've seen the one of Earth, we've seen the one of Earth, of the inner part of Earth, then we've seen the one of the first ring, and now we're seeing the one on the second ring. We already seen it divide places like Azania, the kingdom of Prester John in the last episode, but it is the first continent that is completely divided in half by the equator, which means this is probably the area that more reminds ourselves of the climates of like tropical environments. So this is Eiwass basically, as we can see in this map. So what is Eiwass? Now that we've seen the geography of this continent, let's start to explore and try to figure out what it is really about. Because this map is filled with informations that can be recalled by the name. There's also some information on the continents that is available online to research, and then of course you have to make your own assumptions and link the topics of the name with what is already known and available information. So that is what we'll try to kind of explore, the path we're trying to recover in this video, and we will start with information given by the creator of the map on the continent of Eiwass. That is that it is the intergalactic traveling and multidimensional communicative ancestral grounds. And the floating continent or levitating continent is not just a euphemism, but it is actually factually true, as this continent is not surrounded by water, but it is in fact levitating on top of the sea, and it is not bordering any water of any kind. In fact, it is made by some kind of material, some kind of rock that is highly, what's the word? The thing like with metal and magnets, that kind of thing, where it levitates because of the magnetic attraction or ejection in this case, and that is why it levitates. It is the home of the Elders, a race of ancient powerful beings that originated from the Caribbean, and speak in tongues similar to the West Indian Caribbean dialects. This can also be noticed by the climate, as well as I already mentioned before. The climate of this area is Caribbean, it's kind of tropical in the same way it is in the Caribbean of the Americas, and that makes sense so far. So this elder race seems to be something very interesting. Apparently some elder people that, like, not elderly, I mean elder as in powerful and ancient. Of course, that was to be taken as obvious, I thought, but of course, let's repeat it just to be sure. And yeah, these elder people, this elder race, managed to exist in this island and have come all the way from the Caribbean. And that is why they speak these West Indian Caribbean dialects. West Indian referring to the old concept of the Caribbean being called the West Indies. So basically the Indies of the West, as opposed to the Indies of the East, which is mostly the areas we would call Indonesia and India, of course, nowadays, as well as Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and more. But that said, let's start looking for informations about Eiwass. So one path of research I found connects to someone called Aleister, and this is the story of this man. The story of Crowley Aleister, or Aleister Crowley. He was an English occultist and magician that heard a voice of an higher being trying to communicate with him. That being called Eiwass, or Eiwass. He was described as an angel, only possible to see in visions, a being that was purely astral. His manifestation was introduced by him, saying he was the minister of Hor-Par-Krat, also called the Horus Child. So already we can see this is dwelling on things like magic, occultism, all these kind of things. Of course, we already introduced this concept with the concept of an elder race, the concept of these powerful beings, and this being the intergalactic and multidimensional communicative ancestral grounds. So of course, it was to be expected, as we saw in the second and third, as we saw in the first and the second rings of the Beyond the Ice Walls. There can be mystical, occultist, and mythological reminiscence and references. So in this case, the story of Aleister Crowley involves this kind of being, this presence that of course is called Eiwass or Eiwass, depending on the pronunciation, of course. So that already is pretty interesting on itself. Now the thing that he refers to himself, so the Hor-Par-Krat, seems to be some references to ancient Egyptian mythology, the Horus Child, the child of Horus. So that is part of the ancient Egyptian pantheon, one of the gods being Horus, of course, one of the major gods of the ancient Egyptian pantheon. And of course this links up occultism, as we may or may not know, depending on you. Basically occultism has often very big references to the pagan gods of the ancients, so the Greeks, the Egyptians, and so on and so forth. And that is why probably there is this kind of correlation when this spirit, this creature, Eiwass, manifested himself to this man, Aleister Crowley, and he referred to himself as this kind of mythological being. So that is the account of Aleister Crowley, but it is not the only account he has of him. And also, talking about the Hor-Par-Krat, the Horus Child, it is the son of Horus that in ancient Greek was called the Harpocrator. He was a central deity in Ptolemaic cosmology and represented the higher state of being of the self, a sort of holy guardian angel. So once again, we can link up the ancient beliefs with the ones of Christianity, as is very often the case when it comes to occultist writings. Very often you will see, and we will see in the following episodes, and also in this one, because we will have things like this, that many cases happen where some things that were considered magic or occultist, while the pagan religions of Europe or Asia existed, or Africa of course, and then when Christianity came along, it became something among the demonic, satanic, and all these kind of just ways to discriminate them, because of course they saw any kind of non-Christian magic as demonic magic. But that's a whole other deal. I might dwell on it on a new video, but not now. So by uniting what happened to Aleister Crowley and the description of Eiwass, we can see what the elders, so these creatures, these beings of Eiwass, are actually up to. They use their immense powers to infiltrate the minds of those that live in the lands behind the ice walls and communicate to them, maybe in the objective of getting them to access some multidimensional part some multidimensional portal and bring them to Eiwass, so they can become part of the population there, or maybe they just can be used as parts of experiments for the elders. So I think this kind of checks out with the lore we had for the continents and also the informations that are online. I think this is probably the right course of action when it comes to exploring Eiwass. I also can't find more information on the fact that it is a levitating continent. It reminds me of that one Hayao Miyazaki movie, The Castle in the Sky. I think that was the name of the movie, but yeah, it reminds me of Laputa, the little continent that was floating. And it is not the only one in history that was called the floating continent, so Eiwass being a levitating continent is not impossible. Of course, even physically, as I said, magnets refuse other magnets, so if both parts are magnetic, they might refuse each other, and therefore there might be a magnetic field that manages to make the entire continent levitate. But that said, it is a very huge landmass, so I had my doubts, but who am I to say? It is an interesting concept, at least to hypothesize, if it is not factually true. Now that we have explored the continent of Eiwass, the levitating continent, I think we might have to go and look for a new continent to explore and talk about. And that one is... we'll have to do a little of moving here. It is Abraxas, the glowing islands. So this is the one in the second circle, which is called Akupara by the creators of the map, which has the most available information on. So most of the things I will talk about with Abraxas are factual informations that come from the lore of this map. So basically the lore that the people that made the map associated with the continent, which is something I rarely do because usually these continents are extremely mysterious and there's basically no lore to them. But in the case of Abraxas, that was not the case, so a lot of informations are directly from the source. That said, I did add some of my own research that looks like it correlates perfectly and completes perfectly the lore that already existed for Abraxas or Abraxas, and that makes it one of the best things I've researched so far because it was more easy to access and also very interesting. So let's get right into it. Abraxas, the glowing islands. So first of all, where it is located? It is located in the northwest of the second ring. As you can see here, it is located south of Peyudwal. I always get this wrong. Peyudwal, this place right here, when I made the video on it, so I think 2 videos ago, or yeah, I think two or 1 videos ago, I kept referring it to Peyudwal, and I had a comment saying it's actually Peyudwal, and you were completely right. I couldn't pronounce it correctly for the life of me. I don't know why. It's probably something to do with the way it is pronounced. Peyudwal? I don't know. Anyways, it's Peyudwal, not Peyudwal. Whatever, not important. Anyway, for Abraxas, you can see it is between the Mazuic Ocean and the Calamitous Ocean. It is technically kind of close to the Montane ring, so as we saw with places like Weldrum, it is very accessible for people that manage to escape the Montane ring and exit the first ring to access the second ring. So going all the way here from Apisia, all the places here, we already saw how you access the first ring from the center of Earth. Of course, you have to go all the way right here, surpass Thoth, which is the nomad continent, the moving continent, so this continent might not even be here, but you hope there is, of course, because you have to, you know, resupply. But anyway, you go right here, Sentinel's Gate, blah 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 blah. We already talked about this a lot of times. Anyway, you exit here, go to Weldrum, and then you have to kind of just navigate the coasts. In the case of Abraxas, I think it is very accessible, since you just have to navigate the coast for more than New Cahokia, and then right here you can find the first islands of Abraxas, which is of course a big island chain. It's an archipelago, whatever. So yeah, I think it is pretty accessible to anybody that wants to explore it. That said, so Abraxas. Let's see a geographical description of this continent. So first of all, we can see that this continent is of course divided in multiple islands. There seems to be one big island, kind of reminds me of Japan in some way, of like having a big island and then smaller islands near it. So kind of like that thing, of course, once again, archipelago. So we have some minor islands like right here, which seem to be non-populated, and then there are more bigger ones that like surround the main island, which is actually very quite interesting in shape. It seems to be like at first glance it looks like this, but it's actually extends all the way here. It looks like some kind of snake contorting with itself. Interesting. Also, we can see there's deserts on this map. Let's get zoomed in right here. So there's deserts, there's arid areas, there's plains, there's mountains, there's hills here, and there seems to be at least 3 rivers that are indicated on the map. So at least this one has a reference to the actual name of the river, but I can't found it just now, but yeah, this will be something we will be referencing later. So that said, now that the geography of the continent of Abraxas is covered, let's see what these lands are all about. So these lands are constantly illuminated in brilliant light with organisms and minerals that sparkle under the sun and glow throughout the night. The continent possesses a great abundance of substances useful for alchemical practices. So this is the most interesting part about Abraxas. Abraxas is not just a random continent that has, you know, just a landmass, but it is actually one of the most powerful continents when it comes to resources. We already saw in the first ring how some places that were not originally explored by humanity had extremely powerful resources on them that could be used to control the world if used in the right way, and Abraxas is one of these. So with the tangent of alchemical practices, let's go and look for hidden information that can be explored by looking into the word Abraxas or Abraxas. So it is said that Abraxas stones were antique glowing gemstones with the word Abraxas written on them in the Greek alphabet. I'll show an image here to show how Abraxas is written in the Greek alphabet. Also, fun fact, it appears that Abraxas originally was written with the key and not the x, which are with the key and not the c, which are different letters on the Greek alphabet. So it might have been pronounced Abraxas or Abraxas earlier, maybe even Abraxas, yeah. And yeah, that's interesting because we already said Abraxas a bunch of times, but it might have been pronounced another way, but you know, that's just a fun fact. So Abraxas has further meanings in multiple ancient languages, such as ancient Egyptian, where it can represent the invocation to the god hand, a warning meaning don't hurt me. So like a major warning. Abraxas meaning major warning meaning don't hurt me to a celestial being. Other classical scholars link it up with the Hebrew ha-bracha, the blessing, or the root for the father creator. So of course mentioning both the father creator as in the father of a child, but also the father creator as the creator of reality, and all of course that being God or Yahweh or something like that in Hebrew. In Greek, it seems to have a Christian connotation, as noticed by Jean Hardwin and Wendelin, that found Abraxas to be a compound of the initial letters of the word combination that says Father, Son, Spirit, Holy, Salvation from the Cross, or for Hardwin, saving mankind by the Holy Cross. So already we can see that Abraxas has multiple meanings. The word itself has a lot of meaning. It is not a random word used for this continent. It has meaning in alchemy, it has meaning in ancient languages such as Hebrew, ancient Egyptian, and ancient Greek or modern or like medieval Greek, so already you can see kind of the thing. Of course, alchemy was at its highest in the Middle Ages because everyone was trying to get their silver into gold or raw materials like bronze into gold. Everybody wanted to get rich off the materials they had with something, and these glowing stones that exist in Abraxas and make the land glowing. So the entire land is actually glowing, but the reason the land is glowing is because of these stones that are in the land, and these stones can be used for alchemical practices. We will see later what the actual properties of these stones are. It's actually pretty interesting. So Abraxas also has a notable presence in the Gnostic religion. This is one of the things I found when researching the name Abraxas or Abraxas. And the Gnosticism, I don't know if it's called Gnosticism or Gnosticism. I don't remember if it's the G that is silent or not. Anyway, Gnosticism is a very, very weird religion. I don't want to get too much into deep, but because it's kind of a controversial topic to a lot of people. But anyway, in this Gnostic religion, it is usually represented not by a place or a concept, but by a being, so a creature. Abraxas being a creature with the head of a rooster, body of a man, and snakes for legs. So a very weird creature that looks to be some kind of compound between human, animal, and more. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the ancient Egyptian gods, but this has completely different roots to them, so we can't just associate them. And of course, beings that are half human, half animal are not exclusive to the ancient Egyptians. We can find them everywhere in history, in the Mesoamericas, in Egypt, in Greek mythology. So, pretty interesting. He was considered an extremely powerful divine being, or a manifestation of God himself by the Gnostics. So, it seems to have some correlation with Christianity, as the following statement is that the Catholic Church saw it as a form of Satan, the devil, and it was actually very criticized. So some of the earliest sources of Abraxas as this creature are early Christian church founders, like the earliest church founders, complaining about Abraxas ruining morality and being demonic. So that's already a lot of information, so we have to deal with. So as you can see, Abraxas can mean very different things. It can be a place, so as we can see right here, the continent of Abraxas, the glowing islands. It can be kind of like the name given to an invocation for help to God in ancient languages. It can refer to some kind of like a compound to make a religious affirmation, and then of course it can be a being, it can be a creature that can be seen as a god or a devil, or even Satan himself. So that's kind of weird. It's interesting. It is very particular, specific how Abraxas was chosen to be the name for this continent, and we can see right now why that is. That can be seen through the countries of Abraxas. So Abraxas is one of the only continents in the second ring that has explicitly been said to host some countries. Although some of these continents are countries by itself, so we saw the Azania, Kingdom of Presser John, we saw New Cahokia, we saw Minerva Croatoan, so we saw some continents that are like literally countries, alright? And we are going to see one more in this episode, but we did not see something that was divided in multiple countries, because Abraxas, the glowing islands, is in fact divided into two different countries. So the first one is the Philosopher's Land. It is a stretch of land to the northwest of the Sambaton River. This is the river I was talking about earlier, sorry. And this is the Sambaton River, this one right here. It starts from this mountain right here, this mountain top right here, and goes all the way right here. So from the Sambaton River all the way to this area, so the entire northwest of from this river and north is occupied by this country called the Philosopher's Land. It is not a country in the traditional sense, if it is in fact a sparsely populated region with no true official government, but it does, however, fall under the protection of a figure known as the Great Philosopher, along with his scholars, who use their magic stones to keep unwanted intruders out of their boundaries. So, as we can see, this immediately correlates with Abraxas stones, and them being the glowing stones that have magical properties. The Philosopher's Land seems to be a land where some humans arrived and they were protected by this like high grand mage, grand wizards of kind of sort, which was an alchemist. Alchemists are actual people like that lived during the Middle Ages, so this is not to be surprised. Of course, alchemy as a science is highly controversial and highly debated. Most people don't believe in it, or some people, as myself, believe in the concept of alchemy, just not in the like traditional one. So you know how you can take a material and when applying it in a solution it can become another material that is like a scientific physical fact. Well, that's basically alchemy, but of course we don't call it alchemy because it's just out of like time. It's weird to call alchemy something that is not associated with the more magical aspect of it. But if these people had access to some very rare and powerful materials such as these Abraxas stones, then of course their alchemical properties would be enhanced and they could do some more serious and more powerful alchemy with it. And of course this is why they want intruders to keep away, so that they can keep these stones to themselves. That said, we don't have only this country in the glowing islands of Abraxas, because in fact in the south of the continent, so everything after the Sambaton River and south, and maybe most of the islands, I'm not sure honestly, probably yes, maybe, I don't know, is only composed by the second country of Abraxas, which is the Kingdom of the Red Israelites. This is one of the few earthly human states on this side of the second ring. So what does that mean? This means that the people that live on the on this part of the continent of Abraxas are directly descendants of the people that live in the inner lands of Earth, so the lands behind the ice walls. So all the Red Israelites, so the people that come into this kingdom, this place, are originated from the original Israel. And we'll see later how this is actually possible. But first of all, let's talk about this country, this place. This is composed of, as I said, basically of anything south of this, and I had to double check this while editing, and basically yes, this is actually made up of all the islands south of this river, south of the Sambaton River. Its capital and largest city is called Kefissa. It is well known for being the central control panel for the production and export of shamir. So shamir, what are you talking about? So first of all, central control panel, export to who? So this product, which we'll look at in right second, is actually exported all the way into the second ring. So we have the countries near it, like the places we will see later, and places we have seen already, and places we have already talked about, being basically buyers of this material, especially the kingdom in the north, or the Philosopher's land, as we already talked about, basically use this material to make their Abraxas stones, or more specifically to divide them. Because what is this kind of material, shamir? Well, shamir is a red glowing substance that can cut through almost anything, and it is stronger than most corrosive liquids, acids. It is insanely strong, and it can be used at high pressures to divide literally any kind of material, and that is why it is extremely useful to create these stones, these Abraxas stones, for the Philosopher's lands, because they use them to create the stones, to divide the pieces of the stones, the minerals, because otherwise they would be too hard, too complicated to divide, and could not be divided from traditional methods because of their materials, basically, because of their the way they are made. So I think that is pretty interesting, honestly, how these people here are okay, no people are from, no outsiders, no intruders, but at the same time commerce and trade with the kingdom in the south, the kingdom of the Red Israelites. So as you can see, these people already have a capital, Kefissa, which apparently is supposed to be right in this island right here, so something like that right here. And this place with the capital also has the control of all the trade of this material. But who are the Red Israelites? Well, basically the people of this kingdom descend from the long-lost tribe of Reuben, one of the 12 original tribes of biblical Israel, and they have maintained their Jewish faith with not too many corrections or differences. So this means that the people that inhabit this kingdom of the Red Israelites are direct descendants of the long-lost tribe of Israel. I think there was more than one of the lost tribes of Israel, but this one is specifically the tribe of Reuben. So if you know biblical history, you will know that they were divided in 12 tribes, and each of these tribes got their own part of the land, but eventually some revolted and blah blah blah. Basically some were exiled, okay, either killed or exiled. And one of these tribes was the tribe of Reuben, which of course many people have tried to explain their positioning in the history by putting it somewhere on the Earth, Earth proper, this part of Earth, the center of Earth. But in this map, it is explained to us they went further than the ice walls, further than the mountain ring, which is why we never mentioned them in exploring of the Atlas, the first ring, and they went all the way to the second ring, finally finding their home in the glowing islands of Abraxas, founding their own kingdom with their traditional Jewish religion, and making it basically this big trading outpost where they trade and commerce and control the trade of shamir, which is of course this highly valuable and highly efficient material. That basically is the entirety of Abraxas. All the information I found already for the continent and all the information I had to research for the continent. I think this is one of the coolest places we have seen. I would put it like on the same par with like the Kingdom of Perser John, and maybe what was it, like Minerva Craton was also very interesting. I recommend watching the video where I explained it because it was very interesting as far as I am concerned. So the last continent we will be looking at today is Xia, Palace of the Jade Dragon, or Palace of Jade Dragon. So, Jade Dragon, let's not get too fantasy, like, this Jade Dragon does not exist, there is no dragon on this continent, that is just a way to describe the ruler of the continent of Xia, or the country of Xia. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, Xia is actually a country, the entirety of the land that is, so this basically the entirety of these lands, so this major continent, these two islands and the archipelagos near it, are all parts of this huge kingdom. And this is where a lot of research came into. Because Xia has to do with China. China and the Cynic tradition is something we have not really touched on either of the two series we've looked on the World Beyond the Ice Walls. Neither in the first series, neither in this series we have a lot of Chinese influence, Cynic influence. I don't know really why, but that's just the case. But in Xia that changes. So let's talk about Xia and the legend that is Xia. So there was once a legend that the first legendary dynasty of China fled from their homeland and traveled far into the unknown to reach a land that could be called home after their dethronement. So what does this mean? It means that the people that live in Xia are descendants, once again, of the people that lived somewhere inside of the ice walls. And in this case, it is China. So this place right here, specifically this very small portion of China. Because the Xia and their country are not just some random place that has Chinese characteristics. No, they are, although debated historically, the Xia state and its dynasty were the first of its kind in traditional Chinese historiography. That means there is no like physical archaeological proof because it is talking about our time period that is so far behind that is hard to prove. But in historical documents, historiographical recallings, this is the first dynasty of China. This is where China begins, basically. There kind of is a period very early that is called the period of the 5 emperors, which is even before that, but that's not China. That is like early proto-Chinese history. Now, China starts with Xia, the Xia dynasty, at least in historiography of China. So that is why we are seeing this Xia, Palace of Jade Dragon, as the country here. We're looking at this continent, basically. So, it was founded by Yu the Great, after the last of the 5 mythical emperors gave his throne to him. So as I said, these 5 emperors existed before them, but after they gave their throne to Yu the Great, and with him the Xia dynasty, this would create the first state in Chinese history, and create the Xia dynasty, which was a state. The way the historical Chinese states are called is basically by the name of their dynasty, and the word dynasty after them. You can see then with the Qing dynasty, Ming dynasty, Han dynasty, there's a lot of dynasties, I'm not gonna be recalling all of them. But yeah, that's kind of the case for Xia. So, chronologically, they are first recorded around 2000 years before the birth of Christ, and seem to disappear around the 15th century BC, and are attested on the Book of Documents, which is one of the oldest Chinese kinds of writing, basically. Anything that is written in Chinese, well, the Book of Documents is one of the oldest ones. So that is very interesting. You can see the origin and the recallings of this Xia state are extremely old, like literally thousands of years old. We've seen this with other places, like Egypt, of course, has a long history, and of course people believe in creationism, so some people say, oh well, it's like 4,000 years, the earth, like what it was, like the earth is 4,000 years old. That's fine, I don't care if you believe that, but you know, Xia existed in 4000 BC, so did it exist like at that moment of creation? Okay, whatever. So it is interesting to at least theorize that. In this book, the Book of Documents, it designates that their successors are the Zhou dynasty, Western Zhou specifically, that according to them gained the mandate of heaven after the last Xia fled. So once again, fled, which means they went somewhere, right? Let's talk a bit of the original Xia, the ones that lived all the way back in China. So when it comes to the area they lived in, was basically along the Yellow River, I think. might be wrong, but I think it's like this right here, because I don't have the rivers on this map right here. So I believe this is like where the Yellow River is. It was a very small part of China, of course, because like the rest of China was not really developed upon, and there were no cities, or if there were cities, they were very small, mostly tribes, let's be honest. It was not the China of modern day, or even the China of 2000 years ago. It was the China of 4000 years ago, so it's pretty much established that this was not the very developed China we know all today. But this area specifically was very good for agriculture and farming, which means that this area was the most populated, which means also this area was the one that was most prone to become some kind of unified state and civilization. So when it comes to the rule of the Xia in China, the historical one, it was wrecked with natural disasters, particularly heavy on floods, which Yu the Great, emperor of the Xia, tried stopping by building canals and leading the water out into the sea. This took him 13 years and earned the respect and admirations of his subjects. This cemented his rule, and once he died, he was replaced by his son Qi, starting a 400-year period of agricultural expansion and population growth, as well as city sprawl, especially in the two capitals, Gongyi and Yangcheng. So these are the major cities of Xia, so Gongyi and Yangcheng, but then, of course, this didn't let the Xia live on forever. And eventually their rule became more and more insufferable for the Chinese people, with Jie, the king in 6000... With Jie, the king in 1650 BC, being an immoral tyrant that detested any sort of higher power, which meant that, of course, the Chinese people are not too much happy with the Xia dynasty in its end, and that caused the overthrow by Tang, which was the first king of the Shang dynasty. So he overthrew the last of the Xia kings, which of course was this guy, Jie. Not a really good guy, apparently, according to the Book of Documents. Despite the records saying that the Xia remained as minor nobles of the land, and that actually were given a fiefdom by the new king, this is actually something that is very much found in historical Chinese tradition. When a king is deposed, they're not usually killed or just something horrible happens to them. No, usually what happens is basically the new king takes power and they're giving a little fief as compensation for, you know, their existence or something. You know, that's you know, how nobles are treated in ancient China. That said, it is unlikely that he actually even accepted this fief, because of course this was the first time this even ever happened. So it might be that in the Book of Documents it is said that he accepted this fief as a gift, but might have not even happened, and they just put it there just because, you know, of tradition. That if everyone after him accepted it, it made sense he accepted it. So it is unclear if their attempt at fleeing was a success or not. And this is where the second Ring Beyond the Ice Walls map comes into the game basically. Because of course this map shows them actually managing to flee. In this case, I'm not really sure what kind of route they would have taken. I guess they could have passed through the Serpent's Gate because of the Chinese vicinity to it, maybe just going right here and then coming out of Shambhala. Since this part is like internal, I heard that since Shambhala is the gates of Jakarta, you can pass into it. It might have been the case, but even if that's the case, it seems like a bit too hard. We might have just passed right here and then to the Tiger's Gate and then just did the route we already know. And from there they got into Xia, the palace of the Jade Dragon, where the Xia people and the Xia dynasty still rules to this day according to this map. A huge territory, maybe even bigger than actual China. Actually, definitely bigger than actual China, right? Let's see comparatively. Maybe the same size kind of it, but yeah, might have been another kind of China. I don't know how many people this might have, but you know, could be a lot, could be less, don't know. The thing is, it's very interesting to see one other of these cases of the people from the inner lands of Beyond the Ice Walls actually come beyond the ice walls and get to the places in the second ring. So that's all for this episode. I have researched these 3 continents, they were all very interesting. I hope you guys are satisfied with the information laid on this video. There was this one continent that I tried doing some research on, but it was literally called a single letter. I can't find a single letter, man, it's too hard. The land of the monopods. This is with the thing in German, the thing in, you know, those languages. I don't even remember what's it called. Anyways, the land of the monopods, I know that in Greek that means like 1 foot, so maybe the people that lived there had 1 foot. Alright, I don't really know. Anyways, that's kind of it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are watching the older videos so we can get up to date to like all these topics. But you don't have to. Once again, this is kind of an episodic series. We don't have to see like what happened before to know what happened next. In this case, just you don't have to know the continents before to know the continents later. So thanks for watching. I'm sorry for taking so much time to make this video. Actually, I've been working on it for like 2 weeks or something, so yeah, sorry for that. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next episode. I hope we see each other next time. Goodbye.